Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Swallow the Stars. This will be Part 22, Chapter 22, entitled The Entrance Exam. Hitoshi is not nervous. He's not. He's weary of crowds, and he doesn't want to run into anyone he knows, and right now he's really wishing that he would have accepted Aizawa-san's offer to accompany him today, but he's not fucking nervous. UA is just massive, and the only reason Hitoshi isn't worried about getting lost is because there are students everywhere. He had known, of course, that UA is the most popular high school in Japan, and that every year the turnout for the entrance exam is astronomical. But knowing that is way different from seeing it. He's supposed to test within the top 40 of all these students? Fuck. And that's already assuming that 0 recommendation students got in, which is already flawed because Izuku got his acceptance letter 2 days ago, so top 39 minimum. Well, the only thing left to do is try. Following the throng of students, and the signs laid out inside the main building, Hitoshi eventually ends up in a large classroom where he registers to take the exam. No one tries to talk to him, and he doesn't even look at anyone else. After a few minutes of waiting, he and a large group of other hopeful students are herded outside by staff members. They're all pros, but he doesn't recognize any of them, which is a shame because Izuku would know for sure who they are and what their quirks are, and across the grounds to a tall cement wall. Oh shit, is the practical exam first? Hitoshi turns toward the voice, finding a boy shorter than him, with blonde hair, wearing a blue t-shirt and track pants, standing beside him and biting his lip. There was a pamphlet, Hitoshi says, only after it becomes obvious with a nervous glance from the boy that he was, in fact, the intended recipient of the question. Shit, the boy swears. I got myself all psyched up for the written exam. Now I'm going to forget everything I studied. With a hum and nothing to say, Hitoshi turns back to the front in time to watch Hizashi-san. Nope, he's present mic today. Step out through a huge set of doors to address the gathered crowd of students. Hey there, listeners! Present Mike calls, his quirk carrying his voice easily over the gathered crowd of at least 100 students. Welcome to the practical portion of UA's entrance exam. Behind me is one of UA's replica urban settings. We have 7 of them on campus, and some of you are going to be traveling to get to your testing site. But for now, listen up. On the cement wall to the left of Present Mike, a projected image springs to life. In the center is some really terrible clip art of a few skyscrapers, and around it are 4 blacked-out silhouettes of something. Robots! Present Mike yells. Hitoshi is suddenly far more appreciative of how soft-spoken he usually is outside of his hero persona. You've all been given numbers, and those numbers are going to be drawn so that you can be divided up into groups to explore your assigned replica urban settings. The goal of the practical is simple. To immobilize the villains, which, in this case, are the robots. He goes on to explain the point system, glossing over the 0-point robot by simply mentioning them and moving on. You'll have 10 minutes to rack up as many points as you can, and there's only one rule: no fighting the other students. Doing so will result in immediate disqualification, otherwise you may attack the test as you see fit. 3 blue, numbered buses pull up as Present Mike speaks, no doubt taking students to the replica cities around campus. Hitoshi tugs at the capture weapon draping from his shoulders and sets his hand on the collapsible quarter-staff that's strapped to his hip, suddenly extremely grateful that support items are allowed. There's no way in hell that he'd be able to take down the robots with his bare hands. Oh, dude, robots? The boy beside Hitoshi seems excited. This test was made for my quirk. I'm gonna rock this. Izuku would be going crazy with guesses about the boy's quirk by now, or more likely asking him every question under the sun, but Hitoshi is content to not strike up that conversation. That doesn't stop his mind from turning, though, with nearly 2 years of assigned analysis homework with Aizawa-san supplying any number of reasons this boy would be at an advantage against robots. An electricity quirk seems the most likely, though there are some technology-based quirks that it could be as well. Present Mike starts calling off numbers, dividing students up into groups of 15. They'll be on a rotation system in replica cities, but it's still going to take an hour at least to get everyone just in this group of 100 through. By some stroke of luck, Hitoshi's number is called for the first group to test right where they are, while the boy beside him gets assigned to board one of the buses. Good luck, man, the boy says, an easygoing smile on his face as he holds up his hand in a wave. Hitoshi decides to humor him. You too. It's so easy to talk to Izuku that Hitoshi forgets how difficult it is to talk to others. No one at school talks to him. They never have, and they never started to, even after the whole thing where the principal got fired. For the last 2 years, it's only been Izuku and, through him, Aizawa-san and Hizashi-san. Maybe some people would call that codependency, but Hitoshi just calls it good luck. Without Izuku, who the hell knows where he'd be right now? He makes his way to the front of the group, handing his number over to Present Mike, who gives him a wink and a thumbs up. Hitoshi doesn't manage a smile, not because he's nervous, but he nods and takes his place with the other 14 students he's competing against. Before he'd met Izuku, before he'd started training under Aizawa-san, Hitoshi had not been a fidgeter. Even now, when compared to Izuku, he thinks it would be a stretch to consider that term as a descriptor to himself. But the reluctance to label his restlessness in the moment doesn't prevent it from being real. Making sure to keep to the outside of the group, Hitoshi pulls his quarterstaff from his belt and extends it out to its full length with the press of a button. The weight and balance of the staff as he spins it around in his hands, over his wrists, and back to his palm is a comfort that would have been impossible to imagine not too long ago. "Excuse me, you are not allowed to have support items in the practical." Hitoshi affects a very unimpressed look at the blue-haired boy who just stepped in front of him. He's tall, but only in that he's about the same height as Hitoshi, though he is much more broadly muscular, clearly developed through training and the right genes for it. Hitoshi rakes his gaze up and down the boy, noting the visible engines in his calves. Neat quirk, clearly built for speed. Does he have a stamina, or is he just a sprinter? Before returning to making eye contact. "Says who?" Hitoshi asks as he spins the quarterstaff again. "You? Give me a break." He snorts, making the forced laugh as condescending as possible. Okay, so maybe one of the reasons people don't talk to him is because he's an asshole. Sue him. Behind rectangular glasses, the boy narrows his eyes. "There are no rules stating that support items are allowed." He makes two sharp chopping motions between them with his hand, and Hitoshi only barely manages to keep from flinching away. He scoffs instead. "There are no rules stating that support items are not allowed," he counters. "Do you really think that they would have let me walk through the registration room and all the way here with these in full view if I couldn't have them? Or are you saying that you know better than all of the teachers at the school?" There's no immediate response, so Hitoshi spins the quarterstaff maybe a bit too close to the boy's face before turning to walk away. "Dude, that was so manly." Hitoshi fights back a sigh. Why are people so eager to talk to him today? And where the hell is Izuku to shield him from these comments? "Kirishima Eijiro." The new boy offers his hand. After a moment spent suspiciously looking at the offered appendage, the last thing he needs is to have some weird touch-based quirk affect him right now. Hitoshi finally caves and shakes Kirishima's hand. "Shinso Hitoshi, and I have no idea what you're talking about." Kirishima laughs as he takes his hand back. "That just makes it more manly." "Students!" In the shuffle of getting examinees onto buses, President Mike had disappeared, and Hitoshi squints, eyes moving over the hero in front of him until he can make out Kayama-san behind the mask and a very exposing costume. Midnight has apparently taken his place. "Everyone in the first group, come inside. Your 10 minutes start as soon as the doors close behind you." Hitoshi steps forward with Kirishima, not awful, and the boy with glasses, unfortunate, as well as a myriad of other students. He sweeps his gaze across the replica of the urban area as soon as it's fully in view. There's nothing around the corner ready to get a drop on them, so he has the feeling the robots either haven't been released yet, or are programmed to stay near the center and fan out once the doors close. Either way, he'll need to get away from the door as soon as possible. Actually, when the door is nearly closed, it's big and heavy and rumbles against the ground as it goes. He starts walking off. No one said he couldn't. No one said he had to stay near the door until it closed, just that the 10 minutes don't start until then. He doesn't care if anyone's following him, though he does hear the glasses boy call out a "Hey!" before being interrupted by someone else. Hitoshi pays them no mind. He tugs the end of his capture weapon free and spins his quarterstaff in his hand. There's a hunk of rubble in front of him that he jumps onto, taking an elevated look down a couple of streets. Near the end, further toward the center of the area, a robot sits completely powered down. It's a three-pointer. Hitoshi grins, and he can feel from the way it curls his mouth and shows his teeth that it's the same grin Aizawa-san gets before sending Hitoshi and Izuku on a 2-kilometer run in the rain. No one stops him as he hops off the rubble and walks right up to the dormant three-pointer. He figures he has 30 seconds tops before the doors close, so he tries to get a good look at the thing. There's a camera embedded in its face, likely acting as its eyes as well as a way for someone, Hitoshi would bet that it's Principal Nezu and the panel of judges, to watch the students from a ground's-eye view. He kicks a booted toe against one of the robot's legs. Thick, metal, hollow inside. The body and head are the same, but there are spaces around the joints that are large enough to take advantage of. In 20 seconds, Hitoshi comes up with a plan, and the doors boom closed from a few streets away, and the robot comes to life in front of him. Hitoshi launches into action immediately. With the robot hardly active, it's easy to throw his capture weapon out around its legs and then jam his quarterstaff into as many joints as he can. There was a key word that President Mike had used when explaining the test: immobilize. He doesn't have to destroy the robots. He can just make sure they can't function anymore, which is a smart and important distinction, in Hitoshi's opinion, because murder is frowned upon in general society, even if the person killed is a villain. Teaching students that the only way to win is through absolute destruction would be a bad thing, so they're given an out through the wording of the test. Hitoshi's going to take full advantage of that. As soon as all of the three-pointer's legs are fucked beyond use, he releases the capture weapon and he rushes away. The 3 points isn't enough, not nearly, but he has 10 minutes and it only took him a few seconds to take down his first robot. He can do this. He immobilizes 2 more robots, another 3-pointer and a 1-pointer, easily enough, but the one after that is blasted away by a kick from the boy with glasses before Hitoshi even has a chance to attempt. Baring his teeth in a grimace of distaste, Hitoshi picks a different direction to run in and sprints away. He spots another student attempting to take down a 2-pointer, but they're too preoccupied to notice the 3-pointer sneaking up on him. The capture weapon is flying from Hitoshi's hands before he even registers moving. It wraps around the 3-pointer's arm and cinches tight when Hitoshi pulls. He's not strong enough to yank the damn thing around, but he doesn't have to be. The capture weapon has a tensile strength of 2 metric tons, so he just has to use that and his surroundings in his favor. Diving forward toward the robot, Hitoshi throws out another end of his capture weapon around a support column for a half-collapsed building. He hates not having one of his support items immediately on his person, but he needs to get these points, and he needs to make sure this dumbass student doesn't die just because they aren't keeping their guard up. Quarterstaff in hand, he throws himself at the 3-pointer and starts digging around in his joints. Only after it crashes to the ground, properly immobilized, does the other student even notice him there. Oh my god! Their hands come up to cover their mouth as the realization of how close they were to injury hits them. Thank you. Hitoshi doesn't have the stamina to spare an answer. He just unwraps his capture weapon, spins his quarterstaff, and takes off running again. The next few minutes are a blur of sprinting, climbing, capturing, and stabbing. After his 10th robot, he realizes that he really wants a blade on his quarterstaff. Retractable or not, he needs to be able to cut things. This blunted end is annoying as shit. And he also realizes that he needs better gloves. Yeah, he's wearing a set that matches Izuku's old leather pair, but they're not really doing a lot to protect his hands against the burn of his capture weapon. His hands are raw, and he wouldn't be surprised if he finds them bleeding and blistered after the exam is over. An announcement goes through the city. 3 minutes left. And then the ground fucking shakes. Hitoshi whips around, following the sound of crashing and tumbling cement with eyes, until he sees it. A massive robot, towering above the tops of the buildings. It's moving, slowly, but every step makes the ground tremble, and it doesn't care at all about following the roads like the other robots did. Buildings aren't even obstacles for it. It's just piles of pebbles to crash through. That's the 0-pointer? Kirishima is suddenly beside him, staring up in horror at the robot. Hitoshi can't even blame him. It's fucking terrifying. What the hell are these teachers thinking? Setting something like this loose in an entrance exam? We just have to avoid it, Hitoshi says, sounding way calmer than he is. It's not worth fighting. It's just here to cause mayhem and fuck. As he'd been talking, Hitoshi's eyes were scanning the street ahead of them, trying to track the walking path of the robot so that he could stay out of its way, and in doing so, he sees something no one else does. What? Kirishima asks, voice going up higher and something close to panic. Hitoshi takes off running. Kirishima, follow me. Someone's trapped in the rubble. There's no way this is part of the exam, right? No fucking way would the teachers stage a student getting hurt just on the off chance that someone noticed, which means that this is real, and the trapped student is directly in harm's way. Thankfully, Kirishima follows him with only a moment's hesitation. Hitoshi has to hand it to him because he's honestly not sure how many people would be willingly running into danger directly, even if it is to save someone. Hell, 3 years ago, Hitoshi would have run the fuck away and just shouted for someone else to help. But he knows better now. He met Izuku, and damn if his boyfriend, doesn't have that influence on him. It's infectious. The way Izuku always runs into things without his own safety in mind. And yeah, okay, fine, that's not a good thing, but right now Hitoshi is only grateful for it. The trapped student is a girl, and she's unconscious. Rubble surrounds her, and there's a huge slab of concrete and twisted rebar laying on top of her. For a moment, memories overlap Hitoshi's vision. A dark room, a monster, a void-like god ripping out of Izuku, and then just an endless swath of collapsed building and rubble and blood. No, he needs to focus. Try to lift that off of her, Hitoshi says, pointing at the slab of concrete. He wants to move the rubble around her, but after a quick walk around the pile, there's no way that's possible. It's the only thing keeping her from being crushed. There's not enough room to wrap his capture weapon around the slab either, and even if there was, he's not strong enough to lift it off anyway. Kirishima's forearms and hands have hardened, taking on an appearance like rocks. Is it just his arms that can do that, or his whole body? As he struggles to get the rubble off of the girl. No use, he says, shaking his head wildly as he backs away and looks at Hitoshi. The 0-pointer is getting closer. Fuck, okay. He just needs to think. What do they have right now that they can work with? His capture weapon might be strong enough to trip the robot, but it's so big that they would have to tie it up high, and even then it's not like the zero-pointer is struggling with knocking down whole-ass buildings. Even if the capture weapon didn't break, the buildings would just crumble like dropped Legos if he tied off the other end to them. They could try to use his quarterstaff as a lever on the rebel, but Hitoshi doubts its breaking point is high enough to get the concrete off of the girl. Shit, there has to be something. Dude! Kirishima slaps Hitoshi's arm, and he's just about to snap at him to leave him alone and let him think when Kirishima points frantically at the trapped girl. She woke up. Ow, the girl says, tears immediately springing to her eyes. Her breathing is elevated, and her hands scramble for purchase on the rubble, threatening to crush her. A frustrated sob rips from her throat. Hitoshi walks over and kneels down next to her. "What's your name?" he asks, trying to get her to talk because he knows an oncoming panic attack when he sees one. "Uraraka Ochako," she sniffles, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. She's still desperately touching the rubble, hardly looking at him. Fear is already set deep into her expression, twisting her mouth and pinching her brow. "Please help me. The zero-pointer." "Uraraka, we're working on it." Kirishima leans over Hitoshi's shoulder. His plastered-on smile is fake, but very convincing, enough that it settles even Hitoshi. "What's your quirk, Uraraka?" Hitoshi asks, still watching her face, trying to reassure her even though he's not good at that at all. But this is heroics, right? Izashi-san had pounded it into his head over and over that priority number one for all heroes is to secure the safety of all endangered civilians. She sniffles again. "Anti-gravity." Oh, she definitely needs to meet Izuku. Their quirks might cancel out. But it's not working. Her frustration comes through in another sob, and she slams her hands into the concrete. "It's probably quirk exhaustion," Kirishima says, voice pitched toward calm and soothing, clearly aiming for reassuring and landing just shy. But even that is really fucking incredible in Hitoshi's opinion because the zero-pointer is on their street and all but breathing down their necks. And then an idea hits him. "Uraraka." He leans over her, forcing eye contact, forcing her to pay attention to him. "Kirishima and I can't lift the rebel off of you, and I don't think that we have a good chance of stopping the zero-pointer by ourselves, but," he says before she can panic, "my quirk is brainwashing. I think I can make you push past the quirk exhaustion. Are you willing to let me use my quirk on you to try?" He knows that he could just force her, but he's had enough of being called a villain. If she would rather die than let him control her, he'll figure out another way to save her. Thankfully, he doesn't have to worry about that. Uraraka frantically nods. When Hitoshi just raises an eyebrow at her, she finally gives the verbal response he's looking for. "Yes, please." Hitoshi's control clicks into place, and Uraraka's eyes glaze over, and her expression slackens. All the panic leaves her body just in time for another ground-shaking footstep from the zero-pointer. Fuck, they're cutting it close. "Use your quirk to make the concrete on top of you float," Hitoshi commands. Stuck in the calm state of Hitoshi's brainwashing, Uraraka lifts her hand and touches it to the concrete slab on top of her. For a moment, all it does is wobble, but when Hitoshi pushes its quirk, Uraraka does the same, and the rubble lifts. Thank fuck. "Kirishima, please get her. Don't jostle her too much, or my control will slip, and then we'll be right back to where we started." Or worse, if the concrete falls, it could disrupt the other pieces of rubble that had been holding it up, and it could crush her completely. "You got it, man." Kirishima immediately moves to Uraraka, dragging her out of the rubble by her armpits and then carefully lifting her into his arms. Hitoshi drops his control on Uraraka immediately. "Run." He pushes at Kirishima's shoulders, not even sparing a moment to check on Uraraka to make sure that she's coming back into her own consciousness well. He's heard from Izuku that it's a lot like being suddenly doused with cold water. Thankfully, Kirishima's good at following orders. They both take off running in the opposite direction of the zero-pointer, dodging any other robots that try to intercept them. Getting Uraraka to safety is more important than their combat points, and they both seem to be in agreement on that, because Kirishima doesn't even hesitate to avoid battle. "And that's time!" Midnight's voice rings through the replica urban area, bouncing off the structures around them. Immediately all the robots power down, including the zero-pointer. "Please make your way back to the entrance." Hitoshi stumbles to a stop in the middle of the street, his quarterstaff falling from his grip as he braces his hands against his knees. He's fucking shaking. Adrenaline leaving him so fast it gives him whiplash. Somewhere in front of him he's aware of Kirishima stopping, of Uraraka making a noise that's somewhere between laughing and crying, but all Hitoshi can focus on is his irregular breathing and the trembling of his legs. "Dude." Kirishima's hand settles on Hitoshi's shoulder. "You were fucking great out there." Uraraka hiccups, clearly trying to get her emotions under control. "Thank you so much, both of you. I really thought, when I woke up and saw, thank you. And I'm so sorry for making you save me." Hitoshi grabs his quarterstaff and straightens up, not really trusting his legs to keep him standing, but knowing that he has to move. He looks at Kirishima first. "Thank you for helping me." And then he looks at Uraraka. You didn't do anything wrong, so don't apologize. You didn't make us save you, and it was your quirk that freed you. We really wouldn't have been able to do anything without you, so... He shrugs. Fuck, he's tired. He's earned a hot bath and an early bedtime, though he may just have to settle for the former, because there's no way in hell Izuku's going to let him fall asleep without a phone call detailing every moment of the exam. And that should be an annoying or exhausting thought, but it instead puts strength back into his legs. As soon as he's out of here, he can call Izuku. They start walking again, Kirishima still carrying Uraraka despite her protest. Itoshi has one hand on Kirishima's shoulder, guiding him through the rubble that he may or may not be able to see, though Kirishima doesn't complain either way. I can't believe they're making us take the written exam after all this, Kirishima says, around a nervous laugh. The written exam. Itoshi had completely forgotten about that. Fuck. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 22 of Swallow the Stars. Chapter 23 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying this fic. Let me know your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.